So you want to go from solo videographer to someone that's capable of taking on bigger projects with a 3 to 5 person team. Now, let me tell you, from someone that's actually done exactly that, it's not about luck. It's not easy. It certainly didn't happen overnight, but there was a big moment, a big turning point for me. And in this video, I'm going to break everything down. If you're new around here, hello, my name is Oliver Whitehouse. To date, I'm 5 years deep in the game with the ambition of building a world-class video production company. I've worked with clients all over the UK and internationally, including the US and the UAE. So with all of that social proof, credibility, authority building bullshit out the way, I also think it's important to mention that I have nothing to sell you here. I have no course, I have no links in my description, I definitely don't sell a LUT pack. The only reason why I make these videos is to express the knowledge that I now have but did need 5 years ago, in the hopes that if you have similar ambitions, then it helps you accelerate in that journey. The only thing I ask is that over the next few minutes, if you find anything in this video helpful, then you share it with somebody else that you may think would also benefit. So let's dive into it, shall we? And today we're answering a question that came through. And the question goes like this. I want to know the process from solo shooter to having multiple crew members and how that came about. For you, was there a single turning point where all of a sudden you just started adding additional shooters, or was there a gradual change, and how did that work for you financially? So the short version is yes, there was a turning point. I basically got booked about 5 years ago for my first 5-figure project, which is super exciting. And just due to the volume of content that we needed, we needed 3 crew members, right? There was no way around it. Leading on from that project, it basically then just opened my eyes to new markets, different types of clients, and I slowly just worked my way out of the solo videographer clients and projects into specialized, larger, more niche productions. So that's the short version. But the long version, if you care to hear it, I'm going to basically break the question down into 2 parts, right? You have the process and then you have the finances. So let's start with the process. So the first thing that I want to mention with regards to the process is that changing the type of work that you do and changing the projects that you work on, obviously it all comes down to your clients, right? A solo videographer, social media type client, right? You may do 1 or 2 shoots a month, produce some small reels and stuff like that. That person is never going to turn into a multi-crew 5-figure plus project, right? They're just not, because it's a different type of work that they're wanting from you, you know? So the first thing is you have to change your market, or you have to think about what types of markets have the quality and the standard of work that I want to be doing and I want to be producing, right? The first time that I had that 5-figure client, it's not actually 5 figures. It was like 9,850, right? But we'll call it 5 figures. I was basically doing a podcast shoot with another client that I don't work with anymore. She introduced me to this new client, and obviously I heard about the event through the podcast, and afterwards I shot him an email and basically shot my shot and ended up getting the job, right? Kind of, that's the long story short. Now, what it did is that really opened my eyes to what I felt was the type of work that I wanted to be doing, right? If you're watching this video, maybe you're kind of similar to me in that I didn't see my career just being a better and better technical practitioner, right? A better and better videographer. I wanted to be the person that was running these 3 to 5 to 8 person crew, big productions, big logistics, right? Like, you know, actually like something that I feel is really cool. But it opened my eyes to the world that I could play in and that people would pay, you know, to me at the time, exorbitant amounts of money for the skills that I had, right? The video production and that they valued it that much. Now, after that point, we basically rebranded. We went kind of all in on the events industry. I still kept the solo videographer clients on the side, but we really went all in on kind of our branding in the events industry. And then it got to the point where I was taking on way too many small tickets, and the frequency of work was just so much that it was just this constant hamster wheel and flywheel of projects. So basically, I changed our strategy in that we were going to focus only on the events industry and begin to weed out those kind of 1 and 2 day videographer productions. So now what we do, or what we did do, is focus on bigger work, but a lower frequency, right? And now we've got that. So now we're focusing on bigger work and bigger frequency. That's kind of how I'm going to scale now into the future. Now, if we move on to the finances, so the second half of this question, ultimately, when you start taking on bigger projects, there is a lot of lessons that you do have to learn. Now, it involves taking on more responsibility, more processes, better systems. You've got to find fantastic people to work with, right? All of this sort of stuff. Because the projects are inherently bigger, it will stretch your personal capacity to deliver for clients, right? Everything's going to get more complicated. So that's the first thing that you've got to be aware of, right? As it specifically pertains to the finances, you have to keep a much stricter eye on the budgets, the expenses, all of this sort of stuff, right? Because it can if you're not careful, it can really begin to run away with you. If you have rental and crew and travel and Ubers and hotels and food and all of this sort of stuff, right? It really begins to stack up as you add 3, 5, 8 people, right? If you're going to set a daily food budget, let's say of like 25 or 30 pounds, you times that by 5 people, suddenly you're spending like 300 a day on food. Now, you really have to keep an eye on the budgets and expenses, and obviously managing cash flow is probably the biggest thing that you have to learn when it comes to taking on bigger productions. Now, what we do is we basically get paid upfront as much as we can. If it can be 100%, I want it to be 100%, right? I want all of the cash. But typically we do 50-50. And then what we do with our team, which is the freelance subcontractors, is we pay them 30 days on the back end, right? So it means that when we finish the project, they all put their invoices in and they get paid 30 days after that. Now, what this does is that it essentially, the first 50% should be enough to cover everybody's wages, right? So you've got that there, you can pay for your hotels, you can pay for everybody's wages, you can cover all the expenses. And then when the client does pay the project, that's when you actually make all of the profit from the job, right? But if you didn't get any money up front, you're paying out for all of that I just mentioned, all the travel expenses, hotels, food, everything like that, right? Rental. Then you're paying all of your freelancers as well as soon as the project's done. So you're basically constantly, what you want to be doing is working with cash from the project, right? If you compare everybody from that initial deposit that you get, and then it just means that if you do have to wait 30, 60 days for the remaining profit to come in, you're not in the red, right? You're basically back to zero. And then when you get that, it's essentially taking you all the way into the green, right? So basically what I'm saying here is that you need to give yourself a cash buffer. You should already have, you're taking on big projects, you should already have a cash buffer in your bank account, obviously, because nothing is ever smooth sailing, but it's important that you create kind of micro buffers within your cash flow for projects, you know? One thing that I will say is that making this change and kind of switching up the types of clients that we went after, it didn't really make that much difference to the amount that I was personally getting paid, right? So if your main goal right now is to just make as much cash as possible, I would probably lean more towards the solo videographer route, because service-based businesses have super high margins, especially if it's just you delivering the service. You could be working on like 95% margins if you've just got to pay for like petrol to get down there and general kind of gear upkeep and stuff like that. The difference with what I'm doing is that I'd kind of reached what I felt was the natural ceiling that a solo videographer could earn. And I knew that if I wanted to make more money and I wanted to grow and I wanted to work with cooler people and work on bigger projects, that I was going to personally have to take a bit of not pay cut, because I've kind of stayed on the same level financially. But essentially what's happened is I've swapped out work that I didn't want to do for work that I now love doing, right? So the actual fulfillment side for me is so much better. The difference is that I'm building a name for myself in a specific industry, right? But more importantly, OG Films, the production company, is building a name for itself, which is going to allow me to scale that, right? I can only scale my time so far. I only have a certain amount of hours in the day. Whereas if I can begin to build a brand, and if I can begin to essentially have clients that want to work with OG Films and not Oliver Whitehouse, right? Oliver Whitehouse is the person that runs the company, of course, but OG Films is known for its standards, for its quality, for the results that it gets for clients, right? And that's how you begin to scale, is by building a brand that has its own connotations and its own almost legacy, right, within this kind of micro market. And that's how you can really begin to scale, because it doesn't matter who's doing the shooting, it doesn't matter who's doing the editing, the clients know that if it's coming through OG Films, then it's QC'd with a level of quality and assurance and results that ultimately they keep coming back for year on year, right? So that's pretty much it for this one. Like I said, the TLDR really is the fact that, like, if you want to do this, like, the money is out there if you want it, right? The projects are out there. You just have to be ballsy enough to go for it, and you just have to ultimately work with clients that value the fact that you need 2 people, or you need 4 people, or you need 8 people, or whatever that might be, right? You need to get away from the low ticket videographer clients who are trying to do everything as cheap as they possibly can, and go with clients that are open to bigger budgets because of what it's going to get them, right? It's more long-term thinking, essentially. So that's everything for this video. If you have any questions that you want me to answer in future videos, then drop them down below. Obviously, feel free to check out all of the videos on the YouTube channel. But with that being said, that is everything for this one, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care.